The situation with Cuba went beyond the point of a crisis right now, team. The country is disintegrating. The entire society is disintegrating right now. Survivors of communism like myself, we know, especially in places like Venezuela, that you can vote your way into socialism, but you can only shoot your way out. We are lacking a lot of young adult mentality in our generation and our society. And 10, 20 years from now, when we are under the same predicament that Cuba is, but in English and with Wi-Fi, we will have nobody else to blame but ourselves.
This episode of the Free Cities podcast is brought to you by Veritas Villages. Now, Veritas Villages are freedom-oriented, energy self-sufficient luxury communities designed for people who want to enjoy peace of mind and real freedom in today's unpredictable world. Join a community of like-minded neighbours who value privacy and independence in a place where you can use Bitcoin, including for the purchase of your property. www.veritasvillages.com/free cities for more info, and in the meantime, enjoy the conversation. Okay, so I think we should just freeball, as they say.
Freeballing.
Mailyn Salabarria.
Yes.
Is that am I saying it right? Salabarria?
Yeah, Salabarria.
Salabarria.
Roll the R's a little bit.
I can't do that. Salabarria.
There you go.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, but it doesn't feel very natural. Last time we spoke was in the US.
Yes.
And we talked about your experience of voting with your feet, leaving Cuba. And so we don't need to go there. But you did actually say to me afterwards, there was so... Or actually, I think it was when you played it back to yourself about a month later, you said, there's so many things that I didn't say that I wish I'd said. I don't know what they were, and you probably don't know what they are now either.
I don't know. I cannot remember very well. But
we will discover anyway. But I think a good place to start would be, first of all, welcome to the Free Cities Conference.
Thank you.
What did you think of it?
Oh, it was amazing. It was a great experience. I think it was a great group of people. And for me personally, it was like somebody pinched me because I cannot believe that I'm standing in this stage, talking to this many people about how was my life in Cuba. The night before, Titus was laughing because I told him, I think you guys made a mistake. I'm just like a simple Cuban girl, just, trying to build up my life. What can all these people learn from my experience? But yeah, I think it was a fantastic moment, and one that made sink in my head in a way better the idea that this is not survival mode in my life anymore. This is now like the phase of purpose and doing what I feel I'm meant to be doing. So it was great in that sense.
Just do us a favor, move the mic up like that again so it's pointing towards you. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
You were just speaking over the top of it. And what about is it what you expected? I mean, some people come into this world, like the Free Cities world is really hidden from your average person. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the projects are quite experimental, and there's lots of unusual people here. And I think if you come in like fresh off the boat, you can look around and go, what the hell is actually going on here? I know you've had access, you've dipped your toes, about a few things, but was it what you expected?
It was, yes. I mean, it was exactly what I was expecting in the sense of meeting people and gathering new information, like you said, about cutting edge technologies, new projects, and overall living concepts that the majority of the people around us where we are or where we spend significant amount of time are not familiar with. So I think in that sense, it was really great to hear and see about all those things happening.
And I had to, unfortunately, I saw you just before your talk, but then I had to go because I was recording an interview. But I know it was like this year's, for the whole conference, the theme was vote with your feet. You've got the greatest vote with your feet story, probably. But what did you talk? What was the main bulk of your speech?
The main bulk was, in a certain way, like joking, but not joking. It was doing the chronological description of how I voted with my feet, when voting with your feet was not even a thing, or at least a thing in the way that the majority of the people in the audience in this conference consider it today. It was one of the main points that I did at the end, which was closing with the encouragement of, after everything that I've told you about that happened when I left Cuba and how I literally had to learn how to be free when I moved to the United States. And with that closing message that if I was able to do it 25 years ago, like I said, with 2 suitcases, $200, not knowing where I was going to stand, today, people in these audiences and those that we can share the information outside with about it, with the resources, the education, everything that we have at our disposal, even the technology nowadays, voting with your feet should be a no-brainer, because we're not in the predicament that I was 25 years ago.
But do you ever think about voting with your feet out of the States? I mean...
Of course, yes. I felt like, even though it was an important phase of discovery and awakening in my life when I came to the United States, because you have to remember that when you're back in Cuba, you see the United States as your literal path to freedom. It is the only place where you can have the potential to realize and make happen that concept of the American dream. And fast forward time, 25 years in the United States, then the more I learn, the more I get involved with the liberty movement, the more I start seeing more and more of the same red flags that I have to escape from in Cuba. So yes, absolutely. Maybe it's my personal view of life. I think that I will never be tied to one place. Maybe in another life I was, I don't know, a pirate, a mermaid, or something like that. But yes, absolutely, to the point that I already voted with my feet between one state and the other 3 years ago in the United States, mostly based on real estate property prices, taxation levels, and whatnot. And I am totally ready to do it again. At the same time, when I think about it, I'm like, well, maybe for me it's a little bit easier because I already survived probably the worst and more archaic version of voting with your feet. So you would think that already got me ready to do it again at any other point in any other circumstances. And I understand that for people that have never had to do what I did, might be a little bit harder, like uproot yourself from everything that you know, from everything that your family know. It might take, more time, more consideration, more thinking about it. But in my case, it's a no-brainer. It's just tell me where to put my carry-on suitcase and I'll be ready to do it.
But what's the line in the sand in the US then? Because most, like you say, most people see the US as one of the freest places on the planet.
And when you compare it with other countries, yes, still is. But the problem is that the more you learn freedom, the more you raise your expectations about freedom. And I think that's the way that it has happened to me. I think in the United States, for me, was a very similar process to what happened in Cuba. It was like a million little cracks in the narrative that made me realize, wait, hold on a second. This is not exactly what I was told or what I thought it was. So it was a combination of realizing how big the administrative regulatory government is, how the whole idea of the political parties is the same dog with a different leash no matter where you go, including the Libertarian Party, by the way. And obviously you have COVID and the lockdowns, and I was just like the only crazy Cuban in the Rocky Mountain states getting blue on my face, telling Americans that I consider very smart people, telling them in their face, how come you don't see what is happening? Oh no, that's never gonna happen here. We have the Second Amendment. We have this and that. I'm like, They might not show up wearing the green fatigues and the AK-47 like it happened in Cuba, but they're doing to you the same slowly in a longer timeline, and just using the increased size of the government and the regulatory state to basically infringe in your individual freedoms and in your rights exactly the same way that happened in Cuba with a military guerrilla. It's the same goal and the same process. They're just using a different method.
So I like that term, same dog, different leash. Did you think that when you were in Cuba? Like, was the political, because that's quite an advanced thing to acknowledge. Like, not many people get there. I've got there myself as well, but it took a long time to realize that, you know, choosing a political party was not the right idea, because it's like two mafia groups fighting against each other, and you're just in there in the crossfire. But in Cuba, do you even contemplate that? You just think the government's bad and I'm just going to get the hell out of it?
In Cuba you don't have, because you don't.
But did you think democracy was the future in a way? Did people in Cuba think, wow, the democracy is in America and we would get a say and the vote and all that? Is that part of it?
It is when you are in Cuba and you have never been able to leave, and you don't have nothing to compare with. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why the dictatorship have kept the censorship and all the information and even the entire population so isolated, because it works towards them staying in power. The less people see, the less people know, the less people can compare. Oh, I saw this in this country, or I saw this in the other one. In that sense, the ignorance of the populace helps the tyranny in power. When I was in Cuba, no. When you are in a place like Cuba, at least in the generation where I was, that there was not that much exchange like there is right now, I didn't have anything to compare it with. I only knew that the only choice would be to get out of there. And then I'll literally build the plane as I'm flying it. You know, I'll figure the rest out. But the first step is to get out of here.
So what's the line in the sand in the States then for you? Because I think that's a pretty bold statement.
It's a little bit of that same combination. You know, what happened with COVID, what happened when I started working in political advocacy and this, I would say mostly libertarian, classical liberals, somehow conservatarian groups. And I realized that they are, from the specific topic or the view of political parties, they are in a chronic circular firing squad. They are shooting themselves in the foot on a daily basis. And they don't realize that all that, there is like a little puppet string in the background creating all that on purpose. Why? Because every time that you have a political party or any group that comes in with a philosophy or some idea of change in the society, they represent a threat to the state that has the power. And then they don't realize that the more Republicans and libertarians and Democrats fight among themselves, we're just so busy here in fighting between political groups that then the big state, this like overgrown government in the United States, keep entrenching in power and keep entrenching in power. It's like the oldest saying of divide and conquer. While we're busy here, you know, debating who is a real libertarian, or if my libertarian is with capital L or the little L, while we are here, you know, chasing the shiny mirror of the day, they keep up there growing regulations that infringe on our freedoms on our daily basis. And nobody's paying attention that literally Rome is burning in the background while we're fighting here the size of the L behind our libertarian philosophy.
So, if you look at Cuba and the trajectory that you go on to get to the state that Cuba was in, even when you left or now, I don't really know. I don't know much about Cuba. Where does it end? Like, I mean, does the freedom ever come? Does it collapse in the end? Because Cuba's been Cuba for a pretty long time, right?
Yes, over 66 years now that the communists have been in power.
Why? Like normally you would expect that in the end, there's some kind of, I don't know, maybe are some people happy with the state of Cuba, inside Cuba?
Only the ones on the elites of the government, the military and the party, because those are making millions. They have invested in buying property and farms all over Latin America. They send their kids to do PhDs in universities in Spain. So yeah, for that elite, it's the definition of Animal Farm. It is exactly the definition of the characters and the stories that you see on Animal Farm. The pigs are drinking the milk and they're happy with it. They don't care about anybody else. Everybody else, it's literally dying of hunger. The situation of Cuba, like right now, as we are sitting here, I was talking to somebody last night after the panel that we finished. We were talking a little bit about this, and I was explaining them that the situation with Cuba went beyond the point of a crisis right now, team. The country is disintegrating. The entire society is disintegrating.
Right now, you mean?
Right now. And the sad part and the infuriating part is that the rest of the world is choosing to look to the other side.
But describe how society is disintegrating. I mean, do you mean culture? Do you mean buildings?
Everything. Imagine, I'm talking literally not only about imagine a picture where the literal image that you have is entire country disintegrating. You have the society disintegrating, the mindset of the younger generations at the same way that the buildings are disintegrating. Right now, for example, there is like an outbreak of 4 or 5 different type of mosquito carried viruses. There are more than 5 children hospitals collapse with kids laying on the hallways, on the floors, because they don't have enough beds to get them there with the IVs and the medications. When we say that the country is disintegrating, I think at a human level, you usually start seeing that when the children and the elderly are the first ones that are going down. And that's exactly what is happening now in Cuba.
What about crime? Is that a symptom as well?
It is. And in Cuba, it's also completely off rails. It's just that part of the censorship that the government and the Communist Party is that they don't want those news to get out of the island. They don't want to be reported. There is a high incidence of violent crime. There is like domestic violence crimes against women. There is like the crimes in the big cities, especially where they have few tourists that are being mugged, people stealing from the house, whatever little thing you can steal from the house of a neighbor. The crime is really bad. The criminality, a lot of people tend to think that when you don't have guns, everybody is happy and well behaved. Well, I have good news for you, and they're not good. That it's not what happened, especially when societies reach this point of disintegration at the level, not only physical, but also moral. There is a moral disintegration of it. It's like everything is off limits, and that always increase the levels of criminality and delinquency and violence and all that.
So, and where do you get your information from? Like, is everyone on social media in Cuba? And
a lot of people are. I have my own sources that I cannot disclose, obviously, but a lot of things get put on social media. And still, some of the people that are doing independent reporting on social media are facing the retaliation and the consequences of the government when something gets exposed and is something that they want to literally just like sweep under the rug. But yeah, I have friends, I have some, relatives still there, and we get information from all of them too.
And what do you think the result will be in the end? I mean, how long can they kick the can down the road? How long can this happen?
That's the $1 million question, Tim. We have generations of Cubans that have died in exile with that bottle of champagne or that bottle of rum hidden in their closet because it's the one that they have been saving since they left Cuba. And they have been saving that one to do a toast the day that the dictatorship is not there anymore. And it's countless of generations of Cuban Americans, not only in the United States, but all over the world, that have died without being able to pop that bottle of champagne.
That's amazing. Over in Europe, we hear almost nothing about Cuba. I mean, the most I've ever heard about Cuba really is you get a few adventurous travelers who go there on holiday, and they always say, "Oh, it's really quaint. There's loads of old cars around. There's always a guy
quaint.
with it." You know what I mean? there's a guy with a cigar who looks really
I'm
interesting.
always ready to go Cuban nuclear every time that somebody tells me, oh, it was so quaint. And I love the old cars and the cigars and the beaches. And I'm like, that's not the reality of Cuba that you saw. And I think there is like a two-part component of it. Number one is the fact that you mentioned that there is not a lot of information about Cuba is not a coincidence. It's by design. That's the way that the Communist Party and the government had designed it to be since day one. So they operate like on a perennial crisis management plan, if you will. We're communicators. That's part of like what we do when we work with communications and PR. You establish your, crisis management plan, and when something blows up, those are the steps that you follow. You have to imagine something like that. That's exactly what the government have been doing since day one, and they just pick up the crisis when something leaks. That's the number one factor. The number two factor is that they have sold a reality to the rest of the world of Cuba that is not the one that your average Cuban person live on a daily basis. That's one of the reasons why when I encounter people like you mentioned that, and they ask me, oh, I want to go to Cuba. Do you have recommendations or tips or this and that? And my question always takes them by surprise, because I answer back with a question asking them, well, it depends. It depends of which Cuba do you want to see. Do you want to see the one that the government propaganda have been marketing to the rest of the world for more than 66 years? Or do you want to see the real Cuba where I live, where I grew up, and where I still have friends and family suffering on a daily basis? And then depending of that, I can tell you my tips or my recommendations.
But in country, if I was to go there, I'm not kept away from real Cuba, am I? Like the government, it's not like like in North Korea. Have you ever seen what happens when you go to North Korea? You get shadowed by a government official and all this kind of stuff. That doesn't happen, right?
Not that often anymore, but it still happens. When I was in Cuba, it was like that.
Really?
Yeah, it was like that. Now there is like, you might have, I would say, a little bit of leeway, but you cannot think about it from the Western standards or from the standards of the rest of the world, because it's not like that. There is, the government and the government information and the political police is embedded in every fabric little piece of Cuba's life and society. And one of the main reasons is that you have to understand in Cuba, we don't have private property. So even if you have one of the 222 small private business authorized by the government, at the end of the day, the way that you get your supplies and where your money goes when you're doing the closing of every day in your business ends in the same place, which is the pockets of the government. So they have probably extended the loop a little bit, but at the end, the loop starts and ends in the same place. And I know it's very hard for people that have been born and raised in free societies to understand how that works. It's hard to even visualize it in your head, but it's like that. It's like a vicious cycle where at the end of the day, let's say that you go and you're thinking that you're staying in an Airbnb and eating in a little small restaurant in a rooftop in Centro Habana, in the capital. Yes, they are selling that to you as a private little restaurant, as a private little hotel. But the actual concept of private that you and I have when it comes to property is not what is happening in there.
How does it work then if there's no private property and say you run a restaurant? Do you pay rent to the government and you make, what happens to the money you make in the restaurant and stuff?
In most cases, you have to pay rent. Whatever rent you pay is always to the government, because houses, spaces, real estate, it's all owned by the government. Even like after you finish supposedly paying it, you still have to pay the taxes, exactly as in the United States. By the way, that was another line in the sand to go back to your question in the United States, when I realized that, I bought the house, but I still have to pay property taxes every month, every year. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Then this is not real private property. I'm just renting this space from the government. And then if I don't pay the taxes, they're going to come and people said, and kick me out of it. Okay, hold on a second. Somebody explain me the concept of private property again, because I think I missed something on it. It's the same system with the little Airbnbs and the little hotels and the little restaurants in Cuba. And then now in the last 10 years, the crisis, like I said, it's gone beyond the point of crisis. It's now a disintegration of everything is even worse.
Do you think it's coming to a head then?
I think it is. But I think that 99% of the people around us are not ready to understand what is going to be the tipping point.
Why? Go on then.
The tipping point is going to be taking down Maduro in Venezuela.
Why?
Because the little oils and supplies that are coming to Cuba right now are coming from Venezuela. And that's what keeps Gaesa and the military junta company that is running the little hotels and whatever little, the pauperated economy we still have running on the island. That's what they control. That's literally their pipeline.
But what makes you think Maduro is going to disappear or lose power?
Well, because he has been tied with all these drug trafficking and human trafficking operations that have been directly impacted the United States and all the countries surrounding Venezuela in Latin America and Central America. It's a really, really bad crisis, what is happening with the drugs and the human trafficking and the women and children trafficking in borders in different countries. At some point, all that has to stop.
I don't know anything about any of this. I'm so out of touch with what's going on.
And there is the U.S. Department of State is doing a big operation against the drug trafficking in the Caribbean now. So we're kind of like crossing our fingers, like it's nobody wants a war. Nobody wants, soldiers to die or anything like that. But at least survivors of communism like myself, we know, especially in places like Venezuela, that you can vote your way into socialism, but you can only shoot your way out. They're never going to leave power.
I did an interview a few weeks ago where we basically concluded that democracy always ends in socialism. Funnily enough,
of course, but
that's a
it's the tyranny of the majority. You only need +1. To be either in the wolf side or in the sheep side. So it is the tyranny of the majority, yes.
So do you think that if Maduro was overthrown, people would see that in Cuba and then act? Or do you think that the oil, the trade, as you said,
I think it would be at least one component of it. All the military operations, the special securities, the special forces, private police, everything in Venezuela now is being run by the Cuban state security. And it's been running like that since Chavez was in power. Maduro was trained in the Communist Party leadership school in Havana before he took power. And they did the same with Hugo Chavez. So a lot of people in the world don't understand the intricacies of how close connected the repressive machine in Cuba was implemented in Venezuela. So I think that, yes, definitely if Maduro is out of power and a democratic new administration comes in Venezuela, it's going to make a big impact in Cuba. But at the same time, I don't think that the solution to Cuba getting out of this disaster of communism for so many years is going to come from only one way. I think it has to be like a series of little cracks that make that communist apparatus implode from within. There are so many other economic factors that play a role with it. Cuba, for example, I believe that the remittances that Cuban refugees and exiles in the United States and other countries of the world represented the year before like the second largest revenue stream that the government have. Like the most money that the Cuban government is getting, I believe number one was trade with the United States, and I think number two was the remittances, which is the money that Cubans and Cuban Americans that escape and leave out of the country are sending back to help their families.
Yeah, but why did the government get it?
Because the government owns the banks and owns the entire currency circulation.
What's the currency in
Let me
Cuba?
give you an example. Let's say that I have a cousin living in Camagüey now, and I send her $100. When she goes and gets to change it, she doesn't get $100. I think she gets like 70 or 75, and the government keep the rest. And when I say the government keep the rest, yeah, it's the little bank or the little exchange office, but who owns that bank and who owns that exchange office? It is the government.
Wow. So that must be a bitter pill to swallow, sending money home to the government.
I don't.
No,
I'm sorry. I refuse to keep feeding the monster that forced me to leave my entire life behind 25 years ago. I don't.
And what's the currency?
It's the Cuban peso.
Oh, right. So they have their own currency.
Yeah.
So there's no other way to get pesos.
No,
and obviously Bitcoin would be a great
and the
way.
dollar too. And now the dollar a few years ago was legalized again, because that's the other thing. When I was in Cuba in the early 90s, the possession of dollars was a crime. And it was penalized with up to 4 years in prison.
Really?
The name was illegal possession of foreign currency, because they give them like really scary names to keep people from doing it. Then the crisis got so bad that the party had to, backtrack that. They supposedly liberated the dollars and the euros a little bit, and now they are starting to clamp down back on it. The levels of inflation with the Cuban peso and the dollar exchange in Cuba now is at the same levels of Venezuela. I believe the last week or the week before we came here to Prague, I was talking to someone and they were telling me that $1 was like nearly 1,000 Cuban pesos or something like that. And then the government did all this propaganda of, we're increasing the minimum salary and this and that. It was a lie. They just changed the numbers so the inflation rates weren't so evident to people that can do some math.
So when you send dollars back to Cuba, they have to go into obviously a bank, is it the Central Bank of Cuba or whatever? Mm-hmm. And they hold the dollars or they convert them into pesos straight away?
They convert it into pesos straight away and they give the person the pesos.
Keep the dollars.
Yeah, there's some methods where they don't give the person the pesos. They just put the equivalent in a debit card. I mean, in Cuba, the whole thing with debit cards and electronic transactions started after I left. So I'm not very familiar with how it works. But yeah, it's something they are holding into the literally hard cash. I imagine that it's just like piles under their mattresses, and all people that are holding that obviously are the privileges from the government that have easy access to it.
Do you ever get any, like you say, you probably don't know this, but do you get many alternative economies rising up? Like I'm thinking precious metals, gold, silver, or Bitcoin, or any of that stuff. Does it?
No, there is no technology for doing that. There was some guy in Miami, I cannot remember the name of the group, that he was trying to do some Bitcoin with the small libertarian groups of Cubans that are still on the island. How are you going to do that when you don't have the technology team? Right now, they have like power, electricity, 2 hours a day. And this is Havana, the capital that usually have been, the one that they prioritize because they know they run the risk that people are going to riot on the streets faster. How are you going to do that? You don't have internet. You don't have safe connections for anything. You don't have power. There is no way. You have to imagine the situation in Cuba like, I don't know, a deserted island in the middle of the ocean where people are still, not imagine, in reality, they're cooking now with wooden stuff outside. They're using logs and all that to cook because they don't have electricity. They don't have gas, let alone internet that is not even openly and readily available for everybody, albeit being, heavily censored by the government.
And what do people think about that? Like, what I know it's, when we're always looking from the outside in, right? Mm-hmm. I get that it's funny, in the UK right now, we're getting this lot from Americans. A lot of Americans are looking at the UK and saying, what the hell is going on in England? getting put in jail for tweets, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. So I know what it feels like to be judged from abroad, because I disagree with all this stuff about going to jail for tweets and stuff. But what am I doing about it? Nothing, really. What can I do about it? So us looking into Cuba and people having no electricity and everything crumbling around you and everything being old, what is going through their minds? Because that seems an extreme version of what we're seeing. Is it just the same, or is it just completely they've given up?
It is a extreme sin, definitely. It's part of, that description of the disintegrating of the country that I was mentioning earlier. I believe that there is a combination of responses. Number one, you have a lot of, children, malnourished senior citizens that are basically have given up. But it's very hard when you are in Cuba because you don't have access to information, you don't have firearms, you don't have support from anywhere. I was briefly explaining this yesterday too. You have to imagine the situation of the country being an island. We are, geographically speaking, a natural prison. And then if you only have a military junta controlling all the firearms, all the resources, all the vehicles, what choices the citizens have? What choice does the average Cuban, in a rural town in the middle of the island have? When something happens, some people get out in the street with pots and pans in the middle of the blackout, making noises on the street, and that's their way to protest. But you tell me what else it can be done when you don't have anything at your disposal. You don't have internet or power to get organized, to share information. That's why I always say that all that scarcity of access and vehicles of information, it is by design. It is not a coincidence. The government has kept it like that on purpose, so people cannot get real information, people cannot get organized, people cannot protest. That's part of it. The other part, which is the one that deeply, deeply saddened me, I think that at the society level, when you look at human beings, I believe that Cuba has been broken down. They have been broken down, and they are in such a sense of despair that the majority of them, especially if you don't have anybody living abroad that can help you, send you some food or medications or this and that, the level of despair, it's completely, out of control, into the sense that they say, what can I do? There is nothing that I can do. If I get out on the street and try to do something, they're going to shoot me and I have no way to defend myself.
I'd like to take a couple of minutes just to tell you about what I think is one of the most interesting real-world freedom projects that we've come across recently. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll know that I'm always looking for things that actually exist, not the concepts, not the renderings, but real projects where people are already building the future. And this brings me to the Reef Resort, developed by the seasteading company ArcPad, founded, of course, by Mitchell Suchner, who many of you will remember was the winner of the Innovation Award at the 2025 Free Cities Conference. The Reef Resort, as far as we're aware, is the world's first operational seasteading resort. It's located just off the coast of Samal Island in the Philippines, where ArcPad currently operates 14 floating units available through Airbnb and other platforms, a project that has already hosted thousands of guests in both their accommodation and floating restaurant. Now, here's the development that will be especially interesting to listeners of this podcast. ArcPad is planning a second reef resort, this time off the coast of Prospera in Honduras, one of the most important free cities projects in the world, and construction is intended to align with the 2026 Free Cities Conference. So this is where the opportunity comes for you. You can now pre-purchase ownership in the Prospera Reef Resort. Ownership is available either outright or through fractional shares, allowing you to purchase from as little as 1% up to full ownership. Your ownership percentage determines your usage rights, your share of rental income from the eco-resort operations, and your voting power in property decisions. This also gives you the opportunity, of course, to be part of a pioneering ocean-based development within the Free Cities ecosystem. Full units at the Prospera site start from $95,000, but with fractional ownership available, you can participate at whatever level suits you. If you'd like to explore this opportunity, I've included a link in the show notes where you can register your interest and access access the pre-purchase information. If you're interested in free cities, frontier living, and the future of ocean-based communities, then this is a chance to get involved at the ground floor. Seasteading is no longer just an idea. It's happening, and now it's coming to Prospera.
Is it true as well that the chance of something like an uprising is very difficult because there are so many people embedded in society who are going to snitch on you?
Who are snitches, yes. And that's the history of the Cuban Communist Party in power. They have infiltrated everybody and their mother, and that's how they have crushed all the things that they do. I think they have been, for 66 years, the best implementators of all the KGB and Stasi techniques that we have read in books and watched in movies, and they are still being used and implemented on a daily basis in Cuba.
And do you know who the snitches are? Like, if you live in a community, surely, like I'm thinking about where I live, I hope I would know who the dodgy people are, you know.
You usually can't see. We have the committees for the defense of the revolution, which is like a little neighborhood watch. Usually the people that are in charge of that committee have like the connections to be like the snitches level 1 and level 2. You find them in your places of employment. You find them in the schools. They're everywhere. And the most enraging thing, it's not the snitching attitude itself. I mean, we're human beings. We know human nature. You're going to find that kind of people everywhere. It's the fact that there are like the cheapest snitches in the world, because they do that in exchange for a plastic bag with a bottle of cooking oil, a tube of toothpaste, and some shampoo and conditioner. That's the situation that the country has been, in such a level of misery and despair that people are literally selling their souls for a plastic bag with those items.
Is this probably not true, but is it true that the people in charge are living lavish lives, or they're just living good lives, or is it that bad? Or are they struggling as well because of
who are starting?
The people that run the country, the people in charge?
Oh no, the people in charge live like millionaires live in our countries, in the United States and the rest of the world.
But in Cuba they live.
Yes, they are the ones driving the Mercedes. They are the ones driving the Teslas. They are the ones driving the BMWs. We can see the pictures of Fidel Castro's grandson all over on Instagram, in all the private fishing tours and the resorts, and with the access to the food and the air conditioner and the houses that the rest of the population doesn't have. But in Cuba has always been like that. Now, to add insult to injury, don't get me wrong, I don't criticize anybody making money and getting a good house and a good car. The insult to injury is when you have an entire country, 11 million of human beings, selling them the lie that, I'm going to bring you equality and I'm going to bring you a good life, and the reality after 66 years is the only thing that they redistributed is hunger, misery, repression, and despair. They are the only ones, back again, like the pigs in the animal farm. They are the only ones that have access to the milk. Nobody else.
It almost seems unreal to think about it, because it's such a cliche. The cliche is of communism or socialism is that you get the elite class who just gorge on, But you're saying it's really like that.
It's always been like that. Always.
It's so out of order. I mean, I'm probably being naive here, but you'll probably see many, many similarities between that and what you see in a lot of Western democracies, right?
Of course.
Yeah, and I'm missing it, right? I'm looking at Cuba and going, that is just outrageous. How can people? Well, obviously, like you say, they're probably just beaten down so hard they don't care anymore. But
the spirit of the Cuban society, it's being broken down by 66 years of communism. If you read a little bit about the history of the country, that spirit of the Mambises that we had when we were a colony of Spain, those mulattoes in those years that in horses and with machetes did 3 wars for us to gain the independence from Spain, I think that genetic pool has been killed by communism. I don't think it's there anymore.
I suppose I'm swayed a bit by you because you're a very passionate person. I'm assuming that everyone in the country's potentially like that, right? Is that a common?
Yes,
is that part of the psyche of a communist?
It is who we are. It's our spirit. It's the way we are, and the fact that you don't see that spirit coming out on a daily basis in all these 6 decades, especially in the last 20, where everything has gotten worse, it tells you that communism has broken us down as humans.
What do you think would happen then if, I mean, you can imagine it, can't you? You can imagine the whole thing falling apart, and you can imagine what would happen, and then there'd be a tipping point, and then people would be out in the streets, and then there'd be ransacking houses of politicians. And what do you think would happen in the wake of all that afterwards?
I think it's going to be something similar. There was like a little preview of something like that. I was still in Cuba. I believe it was before the 1994 rafter crisis. There was a lot of issues in Havana. That was a famous year that Fidel Castro took the tanks out to the streets in the Malecon to crush the riots. And it was a crisis that it was not as bad as the one right now. And people were just ransacking the stores to get the food and whatnot. I imagine that probably as again, the crisis and the disintegration of the daily life of the average Cuban has been worsening instead of improving, I think that we're going to see that probably in a worse level. Hopefully not violent, but at the same time, I don't know. It's going to take a lot of time to rebuild that country. And I'm not talking about infrastructure and investment. That's the easy part. Once that you get a transition and exchange with the constitutional guarantees for private property, for free market economy, for freedom of speech, the part of doing the rebuilding of the infrastructure is not going to be the hardest one. The hardest one is going to be to change the mindset of 3 generations of Cubans that have been broken down by this socialist idiocy. People that don't have a concept of what personal responsibility is. People that think that the government is going to take care of them. People who do not know how to be free. That's going to be the change that is going to take the longest.
That's an interesting idea. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? That you mean like, but presumably, given the chance, people would want to take responsibility for their own lives. I don't know. I've never been broken down broken as a person. But you're saying that you think that there's going to be a completely dysfunctional society when
probably if there is not a transition plan that has a solid foundation, I think that most people are expecting that there is going to be some sort of transition and there is going to be, elections with hopefully a new government that can change the constitution and implement the same representative republic that we had in Cuba before communism took over. But the problem, that's the $1 million question, is who is going to do it. There's so many fractured dissidents groups. There is not an organized opposition. All those groups have been infiltrated by the state security and police in Cuba. All those groups have also been, up to a point, corrupted by all the USDA, aid, foreign aid and whatnot, get it in there. There is like so many layers, even within the dissidents movement. It's so fractured that it's really hard to anticipate or to even guess what's going to happen.
If it all kind of fell apart, tomorrow, would you think about going back there to sort of rebuild?
Yes, if I have the resources and I see that there is a guarantee of minimum level expectation of what free market freedom is. Yes, there is a phrase from our national hero that he was asked the same thing in the early 19th, and I don't know how to translate it in English, so I have to think about it before I tell you. But yes, I will do it. I won't go now. I can't. Since I left, especially because I have made my career in media, I have made it precisely speaking out and exposing what real life under communism is, to the point that they deleted me from the birth registry records. Someone tried to get me a copy of my birth certificate and I don't exist.
Oh.
So I don't believe in coincidences. If they did that, I probably should not be planning to go and do anything like it anytime soon. But the minute the communists are out and a new free country, it's being rebuilt, if I have, my life is still with me, the time and the resources, yes, I absolutely would do it. I think I even have a map that I drew where I can totally see how many free economic zones we can have in Cuba and how many seaports we can have around the island. And we have the best location in the Caribbean to do all of that.
Do you think a lot of people think like that? A lot of Cubans
yes,
abroad?
We have a lot. At least, I can speak from the ones that I have met and know in the United States. We have very, very successful business people, investors, cutting edge technologies that are Cuban Americans living in the United States and in other countries too. And they share the same value. I am ready to go and help rebuild and help with infrastructure and this and that. But my only condition is that the communists have to be out.
Something I just thought of was you were talking earlier about sending money home and sending medicine and sending this and sending that. Can you send parcels into Cuba from the outside?
Yes, they are, which is another ironic reality. There is a lot of agencies and businesses, I would say most of them in Florida, although you can find them in other places in the United States, that they send boxes and all that. And we have discovered all these years that majority of those agencies are actors from the Cuban government or the Communist Party or the state police that were able to get a visa or a residency in the United States, and they are the ones running those businesses, sending boxes of medicines to Cuba and whatever, what you call parcels.
And do they get through? Or if you sent something to your family, would they get it, or would they just have it?
Nowadays they get it. Again, this was like another change that the Cuban government did after I left. I mean, in my generation, like I said the other day to the audience in my speech, my German brother or sister would send me letters, and they would arrive to my house already tampered with and open. So it was quite different. Right now, the government had to let the valve of the pressure cooker a little bit out a few years ago, and they started allowing people to send food and send medicines and whatnot. I mean, it was the only way, because they tried to put like a Band-Aid, in a surgical wound from side to side in the country. That's what they try to do. It helps a little bit, but again, not every family in Cuba has somebody living abroad that can send them food and medicines and toilet paper and, mosquito spray or something like that.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And it's actually, I think, this is going to sound a bit crass, but North Korea gets all the press about this kind of place, doesn't it? Cuba, you're right what you said earlier. Like I would never think of North Korea as somewhere that tourism would go, but Cuba has a glossy kind of veneer, doesn't it? And so as a tourist, I can just go there, or do I have to get special permission?
No, everybody. Cuba has been open to tourists all the time, even when Americans were, crying wolf about, the embargo and I cannot go and this and that. I'm like, that's a lie. The Cuban government doesn't stamp your passport. They want you there spending your money so they can pocket more cash on their side.
Can you take cash into the country, US dollars? Mm-hmm. So there's a US dollar black market in there, is there?
Oh yeah, there is the regular government control market for the exchange, and there is the black market too. Yeah.
And can you spend actual dollars? I mean, will people take?
Yes, you can do it too. It's like, it really doesn't matter how many regulations and how much control the government does. The market always finds a way.
Talking of free markets, let's go back to America. Let's hear what the latest from America, according to you, since the last time I spoke with you. How's it looking? How are you feeling? What's good? What's bad?
I don't know how to say that out loud in public without having to plead the fifth. It's complicated. I feel like a teenager talking about boyfriends. It's complicated. But I think that you can summarize it into the fact that we have an ever-growing state that it's infringing on the market rules and on individual freedoms and on the mere concept where the country was founded. They are infringing on all of that on a daily basis. And the majority of the people, team, are just the little frogs sitting in the boiling water, like in the little hot tub with the drink with the colorful umbrella. And then somebody back there keeps cranking the heat, and they're not even noticing. The majority of the people are not even noticing.
And you're talking about both sides of the political spectrum here.
Both sides. And then when to that you add the new generation that has been brainwashed in government-controlled schools, paid by my taxes, whether I agree with their curriculums or not, this new generation growing up with this entitlement mentality where, again, that personal responsibility, that basic knowledge of economics, the basic knowledge of what is the limited role of the government, all that is out the window. That generation doesn't know much about it. They truly think that when they need something, they just extend their hand and the government is going to give it to them. They don't understand that the government and the state and their wankers don't produce anything, that whatever they give away has been taken by force from somebody else. When you mix those two things, just give it some time, and what are we going to be looking at?
It was surprising the other day when the Trump administration announced they were sort of, well, I don't know, how do you, commandeering a certain percentage of large businesses. What was the story? Investing in 10% of...
yes, I cannot remember.
Whichever one it was.
I think it was Intel. It was a tech company.
Yeah,
I think it was a tech company.
That seems a bit out of character. That seems a bit socialist
to me. Do you know
what
what was my phrase when I saw that news? I was talking to Trey and I was just like, wake me up, please, and tell me that I am not in Cuba anymore. Since when the government has to be investing anything in a private company? But then, Tim, it takes two to tango, okay? Yes, I'm going to criticize the government, but I'm also going to put those big companies on the spot. It's like, why the hell do you have to go to bed with the government? You don't have a good business model to put that 10% into the free market investors? What's going on here? Somebody enlighten me, because I'm just, a simple Cuban girl that doesn't get it yet.
I think probably when you get the call to say, yeah, hi, we're the government, we'd really like to have 10% of your business. I'm pretty sure at that level you just do it because it's better for you, isn't it? I mean, this is the point.
So
it's like getting a call from the mafia.
That means that we are lacking a lot of young adult mentality in our generation and our society. And 10, 20 years from now, when we are under the same predicament that Cuba is, but in English and with Wi-Fi, we will have nobody else to blame but ourselves.
What do you think of Florida? Florida seems to be the place. I noticed they were even talking about taking away property taxes, which would be...
Yes, they are still working on it. There is a high chance that it's going to be passed. I think that you have in the United States like little bubbles, little bubbles of places where I wouldn't say you have more freedom. I would actually frame it into saying you have less government control and involvement in the market in your life. You have some of them. You have Florida, you have New Hampshire, you have a little bit in the Rocky Mountain states, you have a little bit in Wyoming. But again, it's not the conceptual idea of limited government and absolute respect of the market and natural rights that we sit down and discuss. You get like little bits and bytes here and there, but I would say the entire country is highly contaminated with the wrong concept of what the true size and the true role of the state is.
What's if you had to make a bet on the future of America, what do you think happens? Do you think it carries on trending in the direction that you think you can see, which would lead to something, mimicking something socialist? Or do you think it finds a way out? Or do you think it fractures? Or do you think you get a bit of both, or what?
I will hope that it fractures in somehow where places like Texas and Florida secede and do their own free countries and their own free projects. I think it's a big country. It's one of the largest economies in the world. It's been years and years of government control and growing. They're not going to let go of that easy just because you and I tell them that is not the right way to have it. And then when you add generations now coming up that know nothing else but the government is going to take care of me, and I'm okay living in the tax plantation because that's my sacrifice and social responsibility and whatnot. When you mix those things together, they have ensured themselves a generational growth to keep doing the same thing they have doing for so long.
I've heard people say that there are, I don't know what the latest generation is, but they think a little bit differently. They're not as woke socialist type big government people. Is that not true?
It is true. It is true. And I have been able to see it with my own eyes. Many of the speaking engagements that I work with the Dissidents project, many of the clients that I work doing communications, events, public speaking and all that for them are working with younger, so like the Gen Z. And yes, I have been able to see that revival where they are aligning a little bit more, I would say, a mix of libertarian and conservative leaning. Conservatarians is what we say, where they are kind of like starting to grow a little bit more suspicious of the size of the state, the power and the influence that the government has in my life, in my business, this and that. So that's actually the part that gives me a little bit of hope. But I don't know. It's a big bet, man. It's a big. I don't do gambling. I do, I can do communications and marketing for gambling, but I don't do it myself. So I don't know. It would be hard to predict, I think.
Well, or would it? I mean, we can look historically, can't we, at the trajectory that the society in the States is on. And the sad thing is, unfortunately, especially for a limey like me, is me personally, I look to America for inspiration in that way, in the way of freedom and liberty. And when I came over to visit you guys, I really felt it. I really felt it there. And I've never felt that in the UK. Never. It's not there. It's not something that we have in our consciousness, certainly not on a national level. So it's much sadder. I mean, but say that the US is on the way out. Say it's not the land of the free anymore, and say it's on this kind of like perpetual decline. Have you got hope for other places around the world that might take on the mantle?
Absolutely. I'm looking at Latin America right now and the whole trend of changes that we have seen, which is, again, like that irony, sad irony, if you think about it, because the whole concept of this idea of the American dream, of this, life project where you have limited government influence in your life, where you have free market, where you have individual rights, how it has been deteriorating in the United States, which has been the beacon of that entire life project for the rest of the world for so long. And then you start looking around, and like I tell many, many peoples and audiences when I speak to them, it's like, if we lose the American experiment, where do we go? We got no place to go. This was in the founding documents of this country for so many years. And now what I'm seeing is that hope is actually starting to move south. It's starting to move to the trends of changes that we are seeing in the governments and administrations in Latin America. I think that there are plenty of examples that we have seen lately with Javier Milei in Argentina, the recent elections in Bolivia, what Bukele is doing in El Salvador, the new president in Ecuador. So I am starting to see something that honestly, Tim, I never thought I was going to see in Latin America. Because I am obviously in Cuba, and when I left, I am that generation that we grew up seeing Fidel Castro exporting socialism all over Latin America. And then that generation that grew up thinking, oh, it's like our manifest destiny is to be always governed by corrupt socialists and control freaks that believe in, in centrally planned economy and whatnot. And seeing this trend of change for me has been very inspirational, because I never thought that I was going to be able to see it with my own eyes. Is it perfect? Is it going to happen or change everything overnight? Of course not. We're human beings, and we have to keep our expectations in check, and we have to be realistic that 2-3 decades of centrally planned economy, corruption up the roof, and all that kind of changes are not going to happen overnight. But we have seen something that, again, I never thought I was going to see, because people are saying in the voting booth that they're done with the failures and the corruption of socialism, and that they want this, enlightenment movement to go back, to change to free economies, to low regulations, to guarantee judicial system, to guarantee individual rights. This is the first time that we see something like this happening as a trend in Latin America.
You're right, actually. I think it's no coincidence that there are so many free city projects there, Bitcoin projects there, libertarian things. It is. You're absolutely right. It's the place where that stuff's happening, and maybe it is because you're just sick of. You're just sick of it.
We're sick of it. We're sick of it, and we're seeing a lot of young generations embracing that return to free market and the rule of law. The recent example with elections in Bolivia, 50% of the Bolivian population is 30 years or younger. Imagine having that generation being part of that restoration and rebuild of the country. That's the message they're going to pass on to the next generation of Bolivians that come into the country. That's how you pass freedom alone, literally in a generational timeline. So there is a hope. My hope, at least, is in there. Obviously, I'm a biased source of information because it's going to be my first language and the best weather. But the fact that we can see the trends and, knocking on wood, if we can see Venezuela, Nicaragua, Mexico just getting out of the way with their socialist bondongles and all the, dark cash and cartels and corruption that they have going on, it would be really great. The region has a really, really good potential if steered into the right framework of free market economy, a rule of law, and free societies, with guaranteed rights for everybody.
Viva la libertad.
I have it on my necklace. Here, I have it. Viva la libertad, carajo. I got it on my necklace from the AP network.
Viva la libertad, carajo.
Yeah, that's a bad word, by the way. Don't be, traveling to Latin America saying that word like that.
Carajo, what does it mean?
It means the F-bomb.
Oh, so what? Is that like fucking freedom?
That's exactly what we're saying. That's exactly what we're saying.
I don't mind saying that. Listen, Mailyn, thanks. That's perfect a place to end. I love it when you end on a positive note because talking of Cuba like that is just depressing. It's absolutely depressing.
It is absolutely depressing.
I'm glad to hear you think that there is a massive opportunity for everyone involved, anyone who wants a piece of that new life in Central America, South America, whatever. It's there for the taking, hopefully.
It's there, yeah. It's there for the development the right way and for for the right reasons. And if you think about it, it could be like a snowballing effect where all that trend at some point is going to reach Cuba too. And yes, it's going to take the longest, and yes, it's going to take a lot of money to rebuild and all that, but at some point it will reach the island too. And that's kind of like part of that hope picture that I have in my head.
I mean, it may even be, imagine if it was just the last bastion that fell. It would be, who knows? I don't know. I'm getting too utopian.
We just need to, touch wood and keep an eye on seeing what happens, which is going to be good. I think it's going to be good.
Great. Mailyn, thanks. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you here. I think I'm so glad you came, because last time I saw you, we were in America, and now, and it's almost like I feel like this is a little bit of my thing over here. Not that I saw you much, but I'm glad you saw what's going on here.
Yes, it was great. It was a great experience and a great group of people to see and to meet. So much potential. I met so many wonderful people that I hope, we can keep in touch and we can work on things together.
And we'll be in Latin America this time next year.
Yes.
Hey, see
you guys are going to be the jet lags, not me.
Yeah. Great. I'll see you. If I don't see you before, I'll see you in Prospero next year.
Okay. Sounds good.